Good evening, folks. And tonight we're going to talk about the next playoff poll and where everybody sits. Because obviously the playoffs no longer exist, no longer mean anything. The AP poll and the coaches poll obviously don't mean anything. I might have said that before, so I apologize. But, so who's number one? Oregon. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Texas. Number 4, Penn State. Number 5, Indiana. Number 6, BYU. Number 7, Tennessee. Number 8, Notre Dame. Number 9, Miami. Number 10, LSU. Number 11, Ole Miss. Number 12, Georgia. Number 13, Boise State. Number 14, number 14, SMU. Number 15, Texas A&M. Number 16, Kansas State. Number 17, Colorado. Number 18, Washington State. Number 19, Louisville. Number 20, Clemson. Number 21, South Carolina. Number 22, LSU. Number 23, Missouri. Number 24, Army. And number 25, Tulane. Okay. So that takes care of the top 25 of their complete and total ranks. Now, we're going to get down to the actual record. Now we're going to get down to who they actually will play, of how they will actually appear to be when it comes to that tournament time. Not necessarily that, but who they played and who their next opponent is, okay? Maryland, now Oregon, they just got done beating Maryland 39-18. They take on Wisconsin next. So that'll be an interesting game. Now, I don't know if Wisconsin's really that any good or if they just have fallen off the rails, but I think that might be an entertaining thing considering it's at Wisconsin. That game will be held there. Now, Ohio State, on the other hand, the last time it was held at Northwestern, winds were like literally 50 miles per hour winds, but this time it's held at Wrigley Field. And Ohio State struggled. I mean, even though it was 21-7, Ohio State struggled to get anything going, but they still managed to win 21-7. Now, they just got done stomping Purdue 45-0. And then you got Arkansas. Then you got Texas, who just got done demolishing Florida 49-17. They get Arkansas. And that also will be an interesting game. Then you got Penn State, who just got done wiping Washington right off the map 35-6. They take on a very interesting Purdue team who they struggled games. But you question, why do they struggle? Because they play some good games, but then they have a tendency of struggling in other games, like Ohio State, for instance. They struggled against Ohio State, but other games they struggled against, they lost very close battles. They lost very close battles in other games, but in some, they struggled. They didn't even come close to winning, and Ohio State was one of them. But then you have BYU, who beat Utah by only a point, 22-21. I think their time is really on edge. They literally just sneak past Utah. They take on Kansas next, so that'll be interesting to see how they do there. And then you got Tennessee, who just beat the pants off of Mississippi State 33-14. They take on Georgia next. That'll be interesting. And then Notre Dame just drills Florida State 52-3. Oh. I can't even put words into mouth with that game. But then the biggest talk of town is they take on Virginia next, is Notre Dame. They take on Virginia. Then you get Georgia Tech taking on Miami, and Georgia Tech upsets Miami 28-23. Now, Georgia Tech, everyone has really been putting Georgia Tech under the radar for some odd reason, because every time Georgia Tech has played one of these teams, they always seem to be like very close in every single game. I've noticed that about Georgia Tech. It's always been a very close game, either regardless if they win or lose. I've noticed that a lot about Georgia Tech. Now, our next game was kind of a bit of a shocker, honestly. I'm kind of shocked about that. Alabama stomps LSU 42-13. Number 10 Alabama does. And then Georgia ends up getting upset by Ole Miss. They take on Mercer next. Actually, Miami takes on Wake Forest on the 23rd. About Georgia Tech. Miami takes on Wake Forest on the 23rd, so they get a bye week. Then Alabama, they take on Mercer, a nobody team, so that's just going to be adding more points on the radar. And then Ole Miss ends up upsetting Georgia 28-10. Will take on Florida on the 23rd. They have a bye week as well. And Indiana also has a bye because they will take on, and then we forgot about Indiana. I totally forgot about Indiana, my apologies. Indiana, who's 5th, beat Michigan 20-15, but they struggled against Michigan for some reason. I figured it would be a lot higher game. I figured it'd be more like a score of 55. I figured it'd be more like a 34 to like maybe 14 kind of game. I wasn't expecting it to be this far apart. I wasn't expecting it to be that close. Or maybe like 20-7, maybe. More like, if that. I wasn't expecting it to be like 20-15. That I was not expecting. But now we go over here. Now we jump back over here to Boise State and Nevada. Boise State ends up beating Nevada 28-21 at 13th. They take on and Georgia takes on Tennessee, by the way. And Boise State takes on San Jose State, so that'll be interesting to see how that works out. Then SMU, who dominated Pittsburgh 48-25, will take on Boston College. Then we had our two byes. Texas A&M will take on New Mexico State. Then Kansas State would take on Arizona State. So some pretty good competition between them, but New Mexico State, obviously, I'm not so sure about competition there. Then we got Colorado, who pretty much took care of business with Texas Tech, 41-27. And then Washington State, number 18, who took care of Utah State, 49-28, as they advance to they will take on New Mexico, while Colorado will take on Utah. And then number 19, Louisville will had a bye, and they'll take on Stanford next. Then Clemson, who ended up beating Virginia Tech 24-14, will take on Pittsburgh. And South Carolina, who beat the pants off of Vanderbilt 28-7, will take on Missouri. Then obviously LSU got destroyed by Alabama 42-13, will take on Florida next. Then Missouri, who survives Oklahoma 30-23, will take on South Carolina. Obviously, we just mentioned that game. But then we got Army, who takes on Notre Dame next. Army obviously has a bye because Notre Dame has to take on Virginia next, so they obviously have a bye week. They end up beating North Texas 14-3. And then Tulane, who just ended up destroying Temple 52-6, will take on Navy next, who just ended up getting crushed by Notre Dame 51-14. So that'll be some interesting games to see how well the unbeatens will remain. Now, who knows how well Now, we'll have to discuss about BYU, Indiana. Now, who will... Now, Army here. Army, BYU, Indiana, and Oregon. Now, BYU, they literally escaped their chances there. Now, who knows how they'll do the remainder of the season. Now, question now turns out, how will they do when they take on a very talented team from what you call their rest of their schedule? I mean, I don't know how the rest of their schedule looks, but it looks like the Big 12 doesn't literally look real. I'm not sure how the rest of their Big 12 schedule looks like, but I mean, Oregon, on the other hand, it looks pretty good the rest of their way until they reach the Big Ten championship. I mean, they'll either face Ohio State or Indiana. I mean, Indiana versus Ohio State, that'll be the make or break moment between them two. Ohio State and Indiana both control their own destiny. The winner between them two will move on to the Big Ten championship. Whoever is undefeated will move on to the Big Ten championship. That is that. And that will be how it pretty much will moves down to. Whoever wins there goes on to the Big Ten championship. And then I feel like Ohio State has kind of the upper hand, maybe by at least a field goal against Indiana. It'll at least be 17-14. Unless Ohio State's defense really steps up to the plate and shows some anger. I mean, I gotta say hats off to Indiana for how they played against Michigan. I mean, Michigan came back in the second half like they were on fire. And I gotta admit, I'm not an Indiana fan by all means, or a Michigan fan by all means. Obviously, you know I'm a Buckeye fan. But when I watched that game, I was like, damn, did Michigan come out with a flame underneath of them? Because Michigan could not get anything to go their way in the first half at all. Now, I've seen how Ohio State plays, and they play on fire literally in the first half, and they've played on fire in the second half on offense. Now, if their defense can step up and play strong like they do in the first half, they might have a chance to win. They might actually beat Indiana, which I have a funny feeling they will beat Indiana. Now, if they can beat Indiana, great. But they got to step up to play and actually beat Indiana and actually prove to themselves that they can. Now, when that happens, then they'll have to play just a lot better game than what they did against Oregon the first time. I think we all learned our mistakes from the first time we played Oregon. Even if it's like in the 30s. If we can get all the way down to the end zone and just take an E, instead of like doing several steps backwards and getting sacked, we kick a field goal. With only even if there's 30 some seconds left in the game, kick a field goal and just win it by at least a point. And if you're down 2, just win it by a point. I mean, it's not that difficult, people. We got our chances. We had our chances to win, but we didn't take advantage of them when we had our chances. But I gotta say, I mean, Oregon's still showing lots of weaknesses in their lines, despite having one of their best players back. I mean, there's a lot of ridiculous plays that weren't called, but heck, it is what it is. That's something you just gotta move past. You don't dwell on that part. You just move past, say, hey, we made a mistake. Let's move on. That's how I view it. Now, as of Ohio State, all they have to do, I mean, they just gotta look at how that is done and prepare for them. I mean, literally a lot of teams had a bye week before they played Ohio State. Iowa had a bye week. Indiana has a bye week. I think one other team had a bye week. I can't remember who it was, but only those two I'm aware of had a bye week before they played us. But it's pretty much going to be a tough game when you have those teams there. And obviously, at this point, I don't know how Georgia could possibly get back into the picture if they lose again. They're already at 12th. If they win, it's a victory. But if Ohio State beats Oregon, then Ohio State's the front runner. Let's just put it that way. It's a battle of 1 and 2 all over again. It was 1 and 2 once before. It'll be 1 and 2 again. Well, actually, 2 and 3, I should say, but it'll be a battle of 2 and 3 again. This time it'll be a battle of 1 and 2. Ohio State pretty much will be in the underdog. But with that being said, hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications. With that being said, I'm out of here. Peace.